Hi, everybody. It's Brandy and Shannon. We're here.
Tuesday.
Yep, Tuesdays with Thriving. I have to forewarn you, I am exhausted.
Deep breath in.
I know, yes. I went to a really enjoyable training with my job over like Sunday, Monday, and I just got home today. And I was just telling Shannon before we started, like, I don't ever sleep in the daytime, and I got home and immediately was like, I need to go take a nap, and fell asleep.
So she's coming in with nap.
So I'm like, okay, I gotta get refreshed, get awake. But
I'm coming in with I was almost run off the road by a teenage driver on the way home. So I've just experienced stress response.
Yes.
So between the two of us, you're sleepy. I'm still a little rattled. It should be a good night.
Yes, it is.
Very real.
Yeah.
Very real night.
Yeah.
A couple deadlines coming up.
Yeah.
We have the military first responder appreciation discount.
Yes.
That's what it's called. So that ends, it's already tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's March 20th.
20th.
So that ends at the end of the day tomorrow. So if you know anyone who would be interested, military first responder, please take advantage of the discount. And then Sun Valley Retreat, the closing deadline is April 1.
Yes.
And so we're seeing a lot of traffic, a lot of visits on the website. We've got some couples signed up, and we're just excited to see who else joins. So,
yes. So don't miss those dates.
If
you're been teetering on it, especially for that discount, obviously that's just a wonderful one for you to be able to take advantage of. So yeah. So a couple weeks ago, when people started to talk back with us, they threw out their interact, communicate. Did I mention I'm sleepy? The idea of blending family was thrown out as a topic that they would really like covered, and I wish I could remember now who threw the topic out.
That's a great quiz question.
Yeah. So I've put a lot of thought into this as the professional with loads of experience in blending families. And it's a huge topic is what I've come to the conclusion. I grew up in blended families from probably like second grade, whatever age that makes you, like seven-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so pretty quickly both of my parents remarried, and so we had two new families, and they were far across they were big distances between families, and so I grew up in that environment, and then followed suit, and my husband and I, we are a blended family. We each have, as I so lovingly refer to as our his, hers, and ours. They're like towels, but they talk back more.
Oh, so much more.
Yes. Yeah, and so just the dynamics, the really interesting dynamics of what it is to blend a family. And every day so far, I would easily say, like, blending a family has been the most challenging thing I've done to date. It really brings on, you should also know, though, I haven't really had a real successful first relationship. I just had a kid. So I don't have that experience of having that nuclear family. So I don't have that experience to compare to, but I get to work with couples. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of the knowledge and the experience with the couples that I'm bringing. And then you have a lot of experience with
working with a lot of couples who are bringing in the different challenges.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see families that work amazingly together. It's always fun to hear about, like, when you have this tribe of parents that are all on the same team. And then I also work with families that it's quite the opposite. And I would say communication is the biggest difference between those types of families, those two types. So the families that work brilliantly, like, they're texting, they're deciding who can run where, they're figuring out, if they're more flexible in being able to say, like, well, so-and-so has a wedding in the family or a funeral in the family. Everybody's on the same page, and the kids know it.
Yes.
They know that they can't get away with playing mom against dad or stepmom against mom.
Right.
And so the kids are aware that there's communication happening, which leads to less triangulation.
Yeah, that was, as I was thinking about, like, what are the different things? Because it's really a big topic, but in some ways it's really different than a regular nuclear family. And then in some ways it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you guys are a nuclear family, and kids, and they will try to pull with one parent and work them against the other.
Get away with things with Brad.
Yes,
maybe?
yes, or we know which parent. I mean, just like I have friends that I go to when I want to talk about a certain thing, or like we all have those people, and so kids learn that very quickly with parents. Like this parent is the yes parent, this parent is the that type of thing. But
right.
Definitely what Shannon was speaking to in the realm of communication. You have to be having those conversations. Obviously, we don't want to have the conversations when we're really heated and things have already blown up, but sometimes that's how we find out, like, oh, we need to have more conversations about this topic, right? About whether the kids, can, like today while I was traveling, like my daughter is texting me while I'm like 400 miles away, hey mom, can I do this? And I was like, so I call my husband, hey Brandon, is there something happening about why she's reaching out to me and said, so we just had that conversation just to make sure that he wasn't getting undermined or something,
Yeah, that there wasn't a little game there.
Yeah. So just being able to have those conversations with your partner, and to the extent, I get that we end relationships because things didn't go well in at least some or multiple areas of the relationship, but when we're mixing families, the better we can co-parent with our exes, with the kid's other parent, the easier this part of your life will be. I know at different points in my personal life, when we have real big strains with the other parents,
right.
We have big strains in our marriage,
right?
Right. It does take its toll, and we have to find that balance of what's in our control, right? For a lot of us, when we ended the relationship for certain behaviors or characteristics or traits that we couldn't find a way to make it work in a satisfying relationship, right? And so just because we end a relationship or divorce that person doesn't mean that trait or whatever it is in us or them or combined together, it doesn't just go away, right? And when we have kids with them, then we still get to have that. We still have to learn to work with that and find a way to work with that. And oftentimes what you're finding is then you're helping your kids learn how to work with those traits, right? That's been some of my experience, at least.
Yeah, I think you've got to be so careful, because realize that your children are aware that, I read a quote by a retired judge, that you could tell was just kind of over parents fighting. And I can't remember his name, but it was essentially like, remember that your children identify as half the other, half from you, half from your partner or ex-partner. And that if you are in any way bad-mouthing, vilifying, that they may internalize that as, I am half this. And so being very careful about not bad-mouthing the other person, because you don't want the child to sit there and internalize that, oh, well, you really hate this about my dad, and you say, I look like my dad. It can get very convoluted. So the healthiest outcome for kids is that you can be at least a team. Not that you have to really love each other, but then for the sake of the children, that you come together and that the language is always respectful.
Yes.
Of course, that's my super, I would love it always to work that way.
Right. I guess it's not always that smooth.
Then there's emotions. And then there's wild card people that aren't going to work with you.
Right. Yep. Not every situation is that simple, and it is much more complex. And this is, my dad was with my mom since she was pregnant with me. She told me that's he's been the most stable parent in my life. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's so wonderful when we can come together and have those really great connections, right? Yeah. Where someone rises to the occasion, especially if it is just an opening, if there is a parental opening. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes my sister coined the term bonus, it's your bonus dad, it's your bonus mom. And those were the terms that we kind of used to refer to all the extra parents that you get to have.
Yeah, well, it's like how, more adults loving children is not a negative thing. The important piece is that you have stable role models, parents that are providing that support the consistency, the safety.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of alienation happening, as far as like in divorce situations where one parent is not getting to hang out with their child as much. And then you'll see as it moves into teenage years that can really get like, well, she just doesn't really want to come. She doesn't really want to play. And from my chair, like I know that one of the greatest things you can do for daughters is if they have a great relationship with their father figure. And so it's sad for me to watch some of that happening because I know it's about the pain between the couple.
Yeah.
And that's playing out, unfortunately, with the kids. And so being very mindful that you do not want to play that out.
Right.
But as a couple, how do you stay on the same team?
Yeah. So I really believe that this ties to lots of communication. And it takes a lot of, we've used the analogy of like putting the marbles, Brene Brown's analogy of putting the marbles in the marble jar, right, to find out what is safe. And and it takes that, right, because it's hard to not come into a relationship and be like, she is mine, right? Like, I mean, my daughter, my 16-year-old will tease my husband, usually the parents always get to say, well, I've had your mom longer. I know your mom longer, right? Like my 16-year-old gets to tell my husband that actually she's known me longer. She's been in my life longer, right? And so we have to be having those communications and figuring out there isn't a hard line for it should never be the step parent that does disciplining or anything like you have to figure out what works for you.
Exactly.
What are you comfortable with? Are you comfortable with your partner doing discipline or handling the discipline if you're out of the area or whatever. You just got to kind of figure those pieces out for you and then have those conversations and kind of talk about those boundaries, talk about those limits, talk about those expectations, talk about the insecurities that might be surrounded some of them, right? Because the reality is we bring our past into our future if we haven't resolved it. And so oftentimes in these blended families, we're bringing kind of parts of our old relationship into it. And, I know Brandon and I definitely went through this where, we both at different times felt like we were being held things over our head that really like each other's partners, divorcee exes had done to them, done to us. And so we kind of had to work through that and figure out like, why is this so upsetting to me?
Why is this so triggering?
Yeah. And then it would be like, oh my gosh, it really has nothing to do with you. Okay. Like what can I do so that isn't so triggering, right? Like, and the more we understood, the more we conversed about it, the easier it was to be able to be supportive of each other when it would start to, and understanding that it's like, oh, he's triggered, but it's not really about me. And I know if I give him some space and let him calm back down about it, like, and he's not in fight or flight anymore, like, we'll be able to rationally talk about this. Right. And then we did, we just have to have those conversations. They can't get brushed under the rug for later.
No, because then they can turn into some pretty amazing resentment.
Yeah.
That's not so amazing.
Yeah.
Amanda posted, let's see.
Step parent is a parent too. No child should have to feel guilty for accepting the love of a step parent. Yeah.
Exactly.
So she helped raise the child. Wrong.
I think anytime the children get really confused, I hear a lot of people like, well, I don't want to be too nice to this, to maybe stepmom because then mom feels that. So being able to really make sure that your kids are not layered in that guilt and that it's okay to love
there shouldn't
parents.
be like loyalties or allegiances that are having to be played out through the children. Because that's just going to set them up for some real strains and actually can put a bigger wedge ultimately between the child and the parent that's actually trying to keep them closer.
Right.
Yeah, this is a tender topic for me. This is a tender topic.
It's a tender topic for a lot of people. Anyone who's on?
I was going to say,
questions?
piggybacking on just kind of what Amanda shared. I think another really important element is really trying to take the time. Like, you don't want to give the kids the power, right? Like, I mean, even in a nuclear family, we don't want to give the kids the power. And we need to have some empathy as the parents, as the ones that remarried or got into relationships,
Right.
about what that's like for the children. Sometimes, you know, they're so young that they don't know anything different, right? Like sometimes that's the case. And so it's just part of their normal, but oftentimes it's not. And they're, you know, 7, 8, or teenagers, or maybe even out of the house already. And that can still be alarming or disruptive to them. And
Right.
so, you know, take the time to have those conversations and really try to understand. You know, oftentimes the words, the phrases we're using is like, we really want you to have these conversations with your partner, but also even in this case with your children,
Right.
to try to understand what they're going through, just, you know, and not to fix it, but really just to be able to understand, because it will give you a much broader perspective of what's happening and how to better approach some of those things to build connections and not build bigger wedges or disconnections, right? I mean, kids are going to be challenging through the teenage years in the best of situations.
Yes.
Anyways.
And realizing that, oh, Harry's doing fun stuff, that inner critic voices are really developed during childhood.
Yes.
And so if you remember, I rember as a kid taking on responsibility for things that now I look back and I'm like, no, that was not your
Right.
7-year-old. But understanding that kids naturally, in order to try and gain control over what's going on, they will try to make sense of it. And a lot of times they put blame on self.
Yep.
And so being very careful to have those conversations so that they know that it has nothing to do with them. So that they're not in our office later trying to sort that out. I feel children should be able to love anyone and anything they choose. Yeah, I agree. I think we all should.
Yeah. 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 So those were really the two big ones that stood out. I mean, this is one of those topics where like every single couple, every single family could have a really different setup, right? Where maybe you have really good co-parenting, but we have really weird or strong triangulation happening within the home. Or, I mean, there's just so many of those that it would really be hard to talk to every single one of them, but
forever.
But yeah, like probably those are the two biggest tools I could really pull out of like what would help stabilize, find a homeostasis in the home, you know, in the families, in the communication, and those are is empathy for everybody involved. Like when I think back, here's a little story time. My parents divorced when I said this already, about 7 years old, and my mom got remarried really quickly. And my stepdad was 24 when he married my mom, and she had 3 kids. And we were like, I don't know, 3, 7, and 12.
It's a lot to take on.
Yeah, I can't even imagine at 24 years old taking on someone else's 3-year-old, 7-year-old, and 12-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, and he didn't have children.
He didn't have any children. Those are another unique dynamic. Is like my mom and stepdad, they never had kids together, so he never had, you know, his own children. And when Brandon and I got married, we had his and hers, and that was really hard. But we had some really exciting circumstances in which our marriage began due to strained ex relationships. And it really took until we had Ledger together that like some of those trying to protect his and her finally settled. You know, like we finally were able to have the conversations about the middle ground and come together on those. They're just such interesting.
Yeah, I love the point on like compassion for everyone involved and a lot of patience, and because there's that there's a lot of feelings. I think it's pretty common, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as like you're choosing the child over me, and so being very careful to that. And
I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for having a meltdown in your car on your wedding day. I'm telling you.
Yeah, or
you probably had a lot of guilt. I'm really sorry.
And so just knowing that it is, this is a difficult situation, and that patience with everyone involved and compassion with everyone involved.
Yeah, and actually as we're having this conversation, one other thing that I think all parents, but I think can be really common, I think all parents deal with it, probably, is parenting from guilt.
Mhm.
And I think in blended families, when we split and we know that we're causing pain to our children because, in our head we still feel bad that we didn't make the first relationship work, and so there's guilt about that, and trying not to parent out of guilt, and parenting from love, and recognize that, are you doing your best? And if you're not doing your best, figure out what's in the way and then get yourself to your best. And if you are doing your best, understand that that's okay too, because like if we could really sit with the families that are nuclear, like you'd find it's just as strained there. Like the kids always don't get to do everything, and they don't get to have everything, and sometimes they're mad at mom or dad, or mom and dad also. Those are the things when I work with the couples, and that really the strain oftentimes I think we feel in our head, and sometimes that tape gets going, that it's like, oh, this is my fault because I didn't make this work before. I feel so bad because they aren't getting to, they're moving on the weekend from one house to another, or just try not to parent out of guilt.
Yeah, how to handle when the kids give you guilt trips. Oh, perfect. Or are jealous for loving another person and their kids too. How much do you think the children should have, and who you choose to be with, particularly older kids? I think, what do you think on that? That one's a great question.
To the very last question about how much, my initial gut response is none. I mean, like, I don't think that children get to have that say in who you choose to be with for your partnership.
Yeah, I think given that everything's safe. Of course, we want to make sure that everyone is emotionally safe, physically safe.
Yep.
And then from that point, as long as everyone's willing and open to making those commitments to be a family, they're not, nobody really gets to weigh in very much on who we end up connecting and in relationship with.
If there are, if there's a lot of resistance, like taking the time, these can be really hard conversations to have just at home. Like there can be a lot of fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection, fear, whatever fears that we, yes. And this might be a scenario where you go find a respected family type therapist in your community that could help have some of these conversations. Because a lot of times there might just be, fears of something that we just need to be able to have a conversation about with the children that might, they may not love it, but like, I don't know how older kids are that you're thinking, but like, I mean, when they are 16, 17 years, that actually it starts at 12, like mine's been second guessing everything I do.
Well, that's supposed to. It's developmentally appropriate.
Yes, it's developmentally appropriate for it. But but instead of feeling like, oh, I can't act, or like I'm going to act no matter what, taking the time to figure out what is causing the resistance in, one child or multiple children, or you can do a lot by having actually some pretty basic conversations.
Yeah, exploring what's under the surface of those statements of like, well, I don't like you with this person. Well, let's sit down and talk about what are the reasons, what are you seeing? It's always great to get feedback, but then understand the fears that are underneath. Usually it's fear. Let's see, mom's second husband, and he was abusive. She chose him over. Yeah, that dynamic happens more often than I would like to believe it does.
Yeah.
And it's really, as we know, relationships are complicated.
Yep.
A lot of times we end up in cycles because you think that there's hope, that things will change, that things will shift. Maybe we can just hang on a little bit longer. And then hindsight's always like, oh, well, that wasn't working at all.
Right.
But unfortunately, I see that, and it is incredibly rough.
Yeah. And one of the most important things I see when I work with couples is it gets hard when we start digging into those deep-rooted patterns or belief systems that kind of really create conflict in a relationship, right? And oftentimes it's related to those fears of something happening. But if we don't figure those out, then those same things will play out in the next relationship. So So if you have older children and, you know, like they may see a pattern, right? I mean, sometimes it's easier to see things happening from a slightly outsider view. And this is where it would be like, I would never want to do huge sweeping statements, because the reality is right, I don't know if someone's in a violent relationship, or, you know, I mean, we just wouldn't know that data. But yeah, sometimes we are just replaying the same patterns. And so we leave one relationship and then we actually end up going, and because all the same things we haven't yet worked out in ourselves are still there, like they draw in and we're drawn to same person, different name. Yep, and we just find someone that will help us engage in the exact same patterns, you know, the problematic patterns already. So these are big topics and deep things, you know, and it's really near and dear, right? Because all of these involve, when we're blending families, it means there's kids involved. And so that, you know, makes it even more, you know, near and dear to the heart, that we want to make good choices and we don't want to feel like we're.
Well, and you're talking about, when we do our couples work, we're always talking about like insight into self.
Yes.
And now you've got a lot more people.
Yeah.
And everyone's trying to gain insight, and everyone's playing out some pattern of some kind.
Yes.
And so it just becomes really complex, which is why, you know, I wish we could talk more in big statements, big bold statements, but we know better.
Right.
We get in trouble because that's why I always love the first few sessions, like getting to know the story. No two stories are the same.
No, they're not.
And so it's always, I never get bored, because I'm always learning. All right, well, oh, interesting. That dynamic is playing here, and how does that go? So.
Yeah, so we see common themes, but it would just be absurd to feel like you could just, like, oh yeah, if you do this and do this and do this, then everything will be just fine, right?
Nice.
I wish, man.
No, we would be bored if that's how it was.
Yeah, right. Get a job.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you so much for the questions and comments that have come. This is such a it's just such a huge topic that I'm glad that we've had some people engaged to kind of help guide it and lead it a little bit of what's most helpful for those here tonight. So.
And if anyone wants to like peel out, just like I'm sure underneath this huge umbrella topic, we could spend the rest of the year on all that.
Right.
Brandy might get a little anxious.
I know. I told her, I was like, I have a lot of anxiety about this topic. Like,
yes. It is a big, big topic. So we've got comments. Next week, can we talk about merging families, overly involved in-laws? Yeah. So Brandy has to. I am running away for the next 2 Tuesdays. So Brandy would either tackle that on her own, or we'll need to wait until
we're going to pause until you're back in country.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get back to you on that.
We are adding that.
If it doesn't happen next week, we'll add it. It'll for sure get added to the list.
And we'll see if she just braids it on her own.
Did we already have one other topic though? I felt like we had 3 that came out of that last conversation.
Oh yes, we've got to go back to our list. Okay. So it'll be on the list, and we'll make sure and we will make sure that we cover that.
Yeah.
Yay, we like having more topics. Okay. Perfect. And then, oh, my cat is climbing the piano. It's one of those days.
It is.
Sun Valley, don't forget, military first responders, sign up by
end of tomorrow
March 20th. For discount. Everybody else, you have until April 1st.
Yes.
And then we'll be in Sun Valley.
Yeah, link is in the description of this live, straight to the page. Yeah, and we're going to be in Sun Valley soon. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Jump on it. If you're teetering back and forth about it, like, it is so fun. Have a great lecture.
We're talking to yourself. We've been talking about that. We've been, Brandy has a really fun sister.
Yeah, I could bring my sister.
She has good stories.
Maybe Brandon would visit with me for a bit.
Yeah, we might do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
She'll just see deep breathing. You have to support Brandy when she's all alone.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys on a Tuesday. I'll let you know soon what it's going to be. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Oh, there's a little bit more. Is there a little more?
There's a little bit more.
Yes.
spouse and how to manage your family's opposition in this.
Oh, are you adding this to like the topics type?
Oh,
Okay.
okay, perfect.
See it.
Opposition. So are you adding that to the in-law? I just want to make sure that we have.
How to support your spouse and how to manage your family's opposition in this issue. I'm guessing that's connected to the in-law topic. Oh, there's lots of reaction happening. Probably that means
I think
yes.
we're.
All right. We'll clarify
We'll
more in the comments if it's, yeah. All right.
Okay,
We'll
we
see you
can
guys.
go there. Okay.